As I deal a lot with expedition yachts, over the years I've gotten calls from either existing clients or inquiries from new clients about a certain kind of yacht with a special mission that they're looking for. And basically what they're looking for is a vessel that they can jump in with their family and maybe a few lucky friends and travel anywhere on the globe and be entirely self-sufficient. And what they're looking for is a way to escape a bad situation on land and go someplace else on the globe where they think that they'd be better off and safer and wait out whatever it is that they were trying to get away from. So in the language of preppers and people on the internet who are extolling the virtues of having a bunker, I would have to call these doomsday yachts. And because I've gotten maybe a couple more calls about this recently, I thought I'd do a video on it and dig into it a little bit, and hope that some of the subscribers here on my channel will find this interesting. So when I started doing my research for this video, I went on the internet and Googled a couple of things, and apparently preppers are building all kinds of bunkers for all kinds of scenarios, and these appear to be quite sumptuous, to borrow the words from another YouTube channel. But I wanted to look into these bunkers a little bit more and see how practical they really are and how they would stack up against a doomsday yacht, because we need to know that for people to make the decision about the right doomsday scenario that they want to pursue. So immediately with a bunker, I think of possible liabilities. One would be the endurance. I mean, how long can you stay in a bunker? If the air goes bad, if there are forest fires or radiation or whatever, you got a problem. As far as the water supply, I got to believe that there's a lot of water underground, and you can get your hands on that, and as long as your well doesn't run dry, you're probably pretty good on water, or it doesn't get polluted. I think power in a bunker, in terms of generating electricity, it's going to be finite if you're depending on fuel, obviously. If you've got solar panels and you've got your wind farm up above you there, I don't know what you do if somebody comes along and steals those or wrecks them, so that might be a liability. A couple other things about bunkers. There are things that can happen in your bunker over time that could be problematic. Any sort of health or medical emergency, obviously. You can have a clinic. Maybe you got a friendly doctor that wants to move in with you. Some sort of accident happens in the bunker. Say one of your favorite Teslas that you brought in with you catches on fire, or your lithium batteries blow up. Catastrophic event, you're going to have to get out of the bunker fast. So that could present some other problems, because you're geographically stuck in the location of your bunker. There may be a time that your bunker location becomes a liability. One could imagine that the neighbors outside of the bunker might have discovered your location and might realize that you have a pool and lots of food and stuff like that, and they may come knocking on the door. And then at the end of this overall occurrence that drove you into the bunker, are you in a location that you feel safe coming out of the bunker? I mean, maybe the spot you picked wasn't the right spot. You're kind of stuck for your reemergence. Anyway, those are just a few of the things that come to my mind. I'm not a big prepper, and I'm sure that there are plenty of people that have thought this out a lot better. And you will guess that what I really want to talk about is the doomsday yachts. So for those of you who are not already committed to a bunker, you might now want to think about a doomsday yacht, or maybe you already are thinking of one. And first thing I did was go online and Google doomsday yachts. As expected, a bunch of things came up, and I just wanted to go over the options here. The first one was a coastal mansion, it was called. And it looks like an aluminum barge with spuds on it that you could zoom out into shallow water somewhere near the coast and get your spuds and beer and fishing gear and you could hang out there. So that was one option. The other one was the sort of battle wagon marine Hummer, I would call it. And so this would be a quasi-military vessel, might have a couple of weapons on board, and it looks quite awesome and rugged. And the third one that showed up was the nuclear option. And this is the design that they were offering. And those appear to be the top three that were being offered. And I think we can do better. And I'll tell you why. The Mansion liabilities, it's got a very limited range. That thing is not going very far from shore. It's going to be in shallow water, so the first storm that comes along is probably going to knock it over. There's only so much you could have on board, even if you're a good fisherman, to survive over time. And it's also sitting out there probably within sight of shore. And maybe you got neighbors that want to come by and check in on you and see if you got anything that they want. In the same way that a Hummer in the parking lot of your golf club might look, you know, pretty awesome and macho, I'm pretty sure that any size vessel that you can get your hands on and convert into a battle wagon on the sea is going to have a number of liabilities. One will be endurance, because you're going to run out of fuel or ammo at some point. And the other thing is, I guarantee you that there is somebody out there that's got bigger guns. So I'm not sure that you want to approach this exercise in a sort of aggressive, militaristic fashion. The nuclear option I'm not really going to talk about because it's just not practical, and I don't think it's worth talking about. Other options that I'd like to bring up, one would be the Waterworld option. So this is got sail power, it's got speed, it's got range, and you could actually set it up so that you had some wind generators on board, and you could either use your wind generators to fire up a water maker for your fresh water, and you've also got a big deck area here to collect rain. So you've got that figured out. As far as food supply, presumably you can catch fish and eat a little kelp and whatever else you need to do. Maybe grow some stuff on the deck there. It will require a certain amount of athletic ability, maybe not Kevin Costner level, but you'd have to be a pretty good sailor to take off around the world in this vessel. But I think it's a viable option. As with every vessel, the first thing I like to do is define the mission. So let's talk about Doomsday Yachts and what the mission should be. The first item would be escape. You want to be able to have the yacht ready, jump on board, and off you go. So off you go means you're going to relocate, and maybe you've thought of where you're going, maybe you haven't, but you want to have the ability, I would think, to cross oceans and go to a different continent or a different part of the planet. So that is a capability that is worth keeping in mind, because it will eliminate a lot of the vessels that are going to be available to you. It should probably have some defensive mechanisms, and that could be all the way from a ballistic pilot house to who knows what, bulletproof glass, and then you know, sort of semi-offensive weapons to keep people away from your boat. And that could be the subject of a different video. I've been on yachts that allegedly had surface-to-air missiles. There's all kinds of defensive things that one can do on a reasonably sized yacht to keep yourself safe and keep people away you don't want to see. And maybe the biggest mission item in planning your Doomsday Yacht is sustainability. So propulsion, if your only way of getting through the water and across the water is by diesel propulsion or any kind of carbon product, and I'm assuming you're not going to have hydrogen or methanol or something else to blow up your boat in, eventually you're going to run out of diesel. And are you welcome in the ports that have the diesel? Do they have any diesel? Those will be questions that you don't have to address if you have alternative propulsion on the vessel, and we're going to get into that. Hotel services we talk about on a yacht, we're just talking about AC, water, a waste system, refrigeration, the things that you need to live. So you've got to have those on board with redundancies. So here's an example of a vessel that meets all those mission requirements, And it was ocean proven by Captain Bligh and 18 of his loyal crew members when they were put to sea by Fletcher Christian from the Bounty. It was set loose with 5 days of rations on board and water because they figured that was enough to get them to the nearest island. And it gave them an escape mechanism from either walking the plank or being thrown in irons. It had a sail on it and oars so that they could relocate. And they went through areas that had pirates and also allegedly had cannibals. So I guess in that sense it was defensible. Sustainable. The propulsion was wind and manpower oars. No real hotel services. As far as water, they could collect water off the sails, which they did. As far as food, they had their rations on board, and they actually traveled up to 4,000 nautical miles. Their longest endurance in this little boat was 41 days. So there you have it. There's a baseline of a doomsday yacht right there. Probably not what you're looking for. The other end of the scale of what could be a doomsday yacht, there's Black Pearl and the Amazon guy's yacht, which is over 400 feet. These would make ideal doomsday yachts, and maybe they are ideal doomsday yachts. But I don't want to spend much time on these because it's pretty hard to come up with a yacht like that, not to mention the amount of money it would need to get one. So we'll look at things that are more practical. So I'm going to say what I think the ideal doomsday yacht is. You don't want something that's too big because you're going to have a village of about 60 crew on a really large yacht. You can't go into most ports, and if you do, you're going to have to tie up with the tugboats and the fishing boats, and you're putting kind of a big bullseye on yourself going around in a vessel like that. I think you also want to stay away from something too stylish, but that won't be a problem because most of these really stylish yachts are no good in the sea and they don't have range. Next is rugged for severe weather. You are not going to be able to retreat or want to retreat into a marina every time a line of weather comes through. You're going to have to ride it out. So you need a vessel that can ride out severe weather. And that is going to limit your choices because there are a lot of so-called yachts that you do not want to be out in the real ocean and the real weather on. Long range goes without saying. You want to be able to get across a major ocean and still have plenty of fuel left over to operate. In terms of nautical miles, I'd say at least 8,000, better 16,000 as far as endurance. And there are ways to stretch that endurance. We're going to talk about that, and it's obviously wind. Generation capabilities. You're going to be able to generate electricity for your hotel loads. And there are different ways to do that I'm going to talk about in a minute. A medical facility. Any good-sized yacht will have a medical facility. Challenge is going to be to have crew that are well trained in that area. If your yacht's big enough and you're a friendly person, maybe there's a doctor that wants to come along with you. Generous crew quarters. The crew are facing all the same perils and anxieties that you are in this situation, and you want them to be able to live well. You want them to have good food, good accommodations, their own gym, places where they can go and relax and live a life. So that's a criteria. The appropriate tenders and toys, we'll get into that a little bit, but probably don't want to drag along really frivolous things, water slides, and also, some of these limousine tenders and other sort of glamorous ways of going ashore. Those are not going to be the kind of things that you're going to want to have. You're going to want more of a sort of beach landing craft, more rugged ribs and ways that you can get ashore. And actually these sort of tenders and toys are going to be part of your plan B if you need to get away from the yacht. And let's get into the plan B. Just like in the bunker where you at some point might want to get out, the same thing can happen on your doomsday yacht. So the kinds of things that happen on vessels out in the ocean, one is people come on board that are not welcome and you don't want to see them, and if they are able to actually take over the vessel, you've got to have your plan B of how to protect yourself. We've seen yacht designs that have panic rooms, and I don't think you want to be in a panic room because then you're kind of stuck. It's like you're already locked up, so they don't have to do it. The other thing would be that the ship itself fails. Any vessel that's in class will have a whole abandoned ship capability into lifeboats, tenders, maybe helicopter. Hopefully you're close enough to land, and you've got a place that you can go, good for whoever can get on the helicopter. You can have different kinds of tenders that are fast and capable, and they can get you away from the boat in a hurry. You know, you've seen submarine escapes in James Bond movies. Most of the submersibles on yachts can travel at about 3 knots. So they're really not going to get you any place that you want to go. My top recommendation is going to be get a big sailboat, but not everybody wants to be on a sailboat. So my top 5 recommendations for vessels that you might look at as a doomsday yacht. One would be an offshore supply vessel. These are extremely capable vessels. They've got huge tanks, they've got system redundancies, and on the back deck you can build whatever you want for your doomsday yacht. And this boat can be converted in a way that it looks like a commercial vessel, so it's not going to draw a lot of attention. It's going to meet a lot of the criteria that I listed before. We'll go over that again. The fast cruise supply boat, these are 29-knot boats. They're pretty big. They've got big load carrying on the back deck, so the same as the OSV, you can build it out with whatever you want. They generally have triple or quadruple engines, so that would be gas hogs. However, if you run them on 2 engines, they're actually quite economical. So you could rig one up to be a doomsday yacht. And the advantage there would be that you have the ability to sprint with all 3 or 4 engines and go 29 knots and skedaddle. Another class of ships that would be good for this are survey ships. So these are generally built for governments. They go in all oceans, and they have great capabilities, and they've got good crew quarters and other accommodations for the scientific people. Coastal patrol vessels, obviously these are rugged vessels, good capabilities. Ex-military, hard to find. There's the stuff that's out there is maybe too old to revive, and it might not be the look you want, because you could attract attention from other military that mistake you for being military and get yourself in a situation you don't want to be in. The recommended mods for any of those boats, I would recommend system redundancies, at least 1 backup system for things like your water makers, and maybe 2. You're going to want to have maybe 3 or 4 generators. You're going to want to have additional fuel and water tanks. The commercial vessels tend to have huge tanks that they use for supplying the oil rigs, so you can repurpose those to be long-range tanks. Upgrade your accommodations on these vessels if they already have accommodations, particularly for the crew, because some of the crew quarters are, they'll put 2 or 4 people in a cabin. You probably want to have more single cabins and better mess areas, gym, and facilities for your crew. And I think the reasons for that are obvious. As far as ballistic and defense upgrades, again, that is probably the subject for another video. But with a steel hull like that and a steel pilot house, you can do ballistic upgrades, and it's not a big deal. As far as the defense weaponry, it's so wide-ranging. You've got high-power fire hoses on a lot of these commercial vessels that can be good defensive weapons. And then there's a myriad of other things that I'm not going to get into here. The biggest thing for all these vessels, and it goes back to the beginning of this video, you gotta have some way to capture the wind to push you through the water. There are a lot of different options for upgrading and retrofitting almost any large vessel to become wind assisted, whether it is flying a kite off the bow and let the wind pull you, or whether it is putting up things like ocean wings or some of these airfoils that Maersk and other ocean cargo carriers are using. There are a lot of those, and believe me, you could be very happy going 3 or 4 knots with some one of these wind systems versus not moving at all and being out of power. So that is something that you almost have to include on any of the options that you're doing if you want to realistically have the ability, the endurance to go to sea for an almost unlimited amount of time, to be able to transit all oceans and go anywhere on the planet with or without diesel fuel. So that's my quick take on Doomsday Yachts. Here's a vessel that we're working on now that has the sails and has all the capabilities that we talked about for a Doomsday Yacht. It is not a Doomsday Yacht, just to let you know that people are thinking about these kinds of more practical ocean crossing vessels that don't simply burn fuel to get where they want to go. And if you want to talk about a Doomsday Yacht or an expedition yacht, please get in touch.